Welcome to the EV Ready podcast, featuring industry leaders and their perspectives on electrification, hosted by EV Ready Energy. Hey everybody, this is Chris Nyan with EV Ready for our next iteration of the EV Ready podcast, and I am grateful to have Tom Bennett, the president of Valente Industries, join us today.
Thanks, Chris.
And just a background for everybody, trying to pull from folks in the industry that I know are experts that understand what's going on, what the most critical challenges are. And probably, Tom, you probably know more about some of the challenges that exist out there better than anybody, just kind of given your history and what you've been doing. So would you mind kicking it off, just telling us a little bit about Valente?
Sure. We're a licensed electrical contractor, 27 years in the industry, and we're licensed in 43 states. We operate in all 50, but we're licensed electrically in 43 states. And we've been involved in the EV infrastructure space since 2010. Our very first installation was a Gen 1 charger. So we
Can you define what that means?
Absolutely. So basically, that was a 110 charger that gives you the same amount of power as a wall outlet in your home. And so that was the very first generation of charging, and it's evolved a lot since then. There's chargers out there now for certain vehicles, and certainly for buses that are 350 kW. And that first charger was less than 3 kW.
Have you ever charged on one of those before?
Yeah, yes, I have. And it's at best, it gives my vehicle, which is a Tesla, about 1 to 2 miles of range per hour.
Yeah.
So put that in context.
When I'm talking to people about EV charging, I tend not to even mention that if they're coming from the gas world, because I know what that will do.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So sorry, continue on about LVI.
So we're involved in basically every vertical that's out there, whether it's public infrastructure, fleets, retail, multifamily, commercial, industrial, workplace. We touch them all. Government. We're right now doing one of the federal post offices in Chicago, one of the largest ones in the nation. And then everything down to a multifamily unit that's getting one level 2 charger, and a level 2 charger is the one that gives you overnight charging, gives you 12 to 20 miles of range per hour. But you're going to come home from work, you're going to plug that vehicle in, you get up in the morning, you've got that 200 to 300 miles of range that your vehicle has the capacity to take. So. And then everything up to a 350 kW that can charge a municipal bus, a city bus like the MTA in New York, and can charge that bus and give it 300 miles of range in less than 27 minutes.
And this is probably a difficult question to answer, but how many chargers has LVI installed over the past 13 years?
Our IT guys tried to total everything out between level 2 and level 3. It's roughly about 37,000 charging ports.
37,000. So as a listener, you think about how many ports actually exist out there. LVI is responsible for a really good chunk of them. That's awesome. And I think the other interesting thing is you're working with so many different companies, and probably Tom Bennett knows more about everybody than anybody else in the EV charging industry is what I would imagine at this point in time.
It's just, again, we realize there's still so much to learn and so many best practices to share, that the opportunities need to be explored so that the logistics can work out long term.
Yeah, I hear you. Sometimes people will ask me about EV Ready. They'll say, like, what is your ideal customer? Who are you trying to work with? And obviously, like, we feel like we can help so many different types of customers, but there are certain elements of electrification that are critical to customers that, sometimes is your wheelhouse. So can you tell us a little bit about your wheelhouse? What customers do you feel like you benefit the most, and how do you do it?
It's a fair question, but one that's tough to answer, and here's why. We do really, really well with multi-level sites. So we've got a fleet customer that has 300 locations across the country. And we need to come out with a uniform approach so that we've got the same plan and the same process at a fleet operations center in New Jersey that you have in Northern California. And what I mean by that is, you're not putting chargers up against the wall where this fleet vehicle is driven in, has to back out and pull away. You don't see that with gas stations. You see gas stations and fueling stations, even in fleet facilities, where you drive up and you fuel that combustion engine van, truck, whatever it is, fleet vehicle, and the vehicle moves forward. And it's got to be the same process with electric vehicle charging.
Yeah.
And so, so you look at that and you say, okay, we're going to make an impact there. And because of the fact that it's going to be a uniform approach, and because of the fact that we're touching all of them, we know that there's one throat to choke, and mine is very thin. And so it's very easy for the customer to wrap their hands around my throat, because at the end of the day, we take it from literally from concept to completion. And so, but by the same token, then that ideal customer is also someone, a REIT, that a real estate investment trust that maybe has 3,000 multifamily units across the country. But the value that we provide to them is we're going to value engineer every one of those sites, because there's no two are the same. And so we've got to make sure that we're setting those chargers, as close to the electrical infrastructure as possible, but we're also future-proofing so that, if that tenant is going to be home for the night, they don't need to get a full 12 kW, 20 miles of range per hour if they're going to be there for the next 8 to 10 hours, right? So we can share that. And so it's utilizing the technologies that are out there today that can daisy chain chargers, and you're getting more bang for the buck per vehicle than you would if you were just bagging that one charging port with the max capacity.
And not just that, like if you have your software configuration situated, if you understand how the utility works, and then you're getting the right charger for the right use case, that's when magic happens. And I'm sure you're dealing with that all the time.
Absolutely.
So let me couple different scenarios. You mentioned you get with a fleet that is just electrifying. They haven't purchased their vehicles yet. They haven't purchased their chargers yet. That's kind of the best case scenario for us, because we can come in and provide the guidance to make sure that, you're future-proof, that you're getting the right chargers, that you're providing the right experience, that you're hitting your uptime, all those different things. What do you do when you go to a large fleet and they already have 250 chargers installed? Do you try and build a plan for what they've already done? Do you scrap that? No, what they already have? Like, what's been your experience there?
You've really got to look at you've got to look at the as is and the to be. And so what is it you're charging now? What is the vehicle acceptance rate of the vehicles that you're charging now? And the to be is, what are you bringing in? What's coming in? And what's the vehicle acceptance rate on those vehicles, right? So we're making sure that we've got the right charger for the future vehicles. And in some instances, we are scrapping things because of the fact that the chargers that were installed were dummy chargers, meaning they're non-network chargers. So there's no signal sent to anyone when that car or fleet vehicle is fully charged. None. So you're depending on the human brain to remember to go over and they're manually checking on these. Those types of chargers are, there's no value to that type of inside of any best practice.
Yep.
Commercially.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And, like we've talked about before, like if it's tied to an existing building load, how does that impact the operational costs, all those different things. My next question for you is this. As a guy who's probably dealt with utilities more than anybody, the grid. We always hear questions about the grid. Is the grid going to be able to support electrification? What's been your experience on that, boots on the ground, and what's your longer term take on that?
The utilities are very concerned. We have over 100 applications in right now for just in the automotive sector alone for dealerships that are waiting for new service drops to meet the requirements for the vehicles that will be coming to that dealership. And so the biggest challenge that's out there is obviously how do you work the logistics? And I think that the utilities that have the proper plan in place, meaning they're separately metering the charging stations, they're giving a new service, but it's a dedicated service, and they're requiring that site host to sign up and say that these will be dedicated for EV charging. Not going to tie lighting to this. We're not going to tie HVAC load to this. It's going to be just EV charging. And so that the grid then ensuring that they have the ability through the network smart chargers to dial those things down during peak demand times. That's absolutely critical, because then, just like they do now, they can manage the load. And that's, that's an absolute necessity moving forward for fleets and for any large operator, even workplace.
Then can you talk about the worst case scenarios you've seen where customers' core business affected by EV charging, they need to get the vehicles, they need to get the charging stations, and when they went to go apply for that new service, they couldn't get it?
We have an auto group where the closest trunk line, so there's no available feed on the road. And this is a major auto dealership on a large parcel of land. There's no remaining power on that trunk line. The closest available trunk line is 1.2 miles away. They were quoted $2.4 million to bring that line over to the dealership. And it's going to be 2 years until they can get that. And so that creates a conundrum for the dealership, because they can wait for someone else on that road to request it, and maybe they can split that cost. But the reality is they may go to the OE, and the OE may say, you need to be in compliance, and you need to figure out a way to get the power to your dealership. Otherwise, you're not compliant, and we can't give you the vehicles.
High level, I don't know the answer. I think related to like the entire grid being able to support electrification, as long as people start to charge at night and charge at those off-peak times, that I think eventually utilities will incentivize that to occur across the board. It certainly happens in utilities right now. I think the grid is going to be able to support things, but in terms of individual projects, man, what a challenge this is. I worked with a project up in New York where the utility was going to take several years to bring in that power, and that customer was going to have to participate in upgrading the power within that region, which is just so difficult. If that's the only customer for that utility in that area, someone's going to pay the bill. And, we both work in automotive a lot. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on auto miles, where you have, 15 dealerships that are all required to put in a megawatt worth of power by 2030. What's that going to look like? And how does that materialize in 2027, 2028?
I think that the reality is it's first come, first serve. The forward thinkers that have the vision now and can forecast out what they're going to need, working with the parent OE, I think are the ones that are going to get that service, and the others are going to have to wait for a new trunk line to be brought over.
Yeah,
and bear the brunt of that. I mean, the OEs that put in some major superchargers, because they produced vehicles that can take a 350 kW charge right now.
Yep.
Flooded and grabbed a major chunk of some of these auto malls.
For sure.
And it's not like it's rationed out. The way it works is you put your application in, you do your business case, and you present it. And if it's approved, then you're logged in for that 800 kW or for that 1200 kW, or 2000 amp service drop. It's yours.
I always kind of just joke around about like where we are in electrification right now, because it is truly the wild, wild west. And people are going to look back in 10 years and say, well, why didn't we do this at this time? But there's a documentary that'll be coming out about electrification at some point in time. And I think one of like the main topics of it's going to be the grid and getting power to some of these more congested locations that need it the most, and how that was done. And, everybody's doing their best, but it's tough. It is a wild, wild west for everybody right now.
Absolutely right.
So my next question for you is this. Some of the conversations that I have the funnest time hearing about from you, and I know you can't talk about all of them, is some of the different projects that you did. some of the projects you've spoken to me about are so complex. I wanted to see if there's a project that's like near and dear to you or you've done that you're proud of, that's out there, people can see that wasn't easy. And then the follow-up to that is going to be, what are the biggest challenges? Like if you had to say three things that are your biggest challenges as an installer for customers that they should be looking out for, what are they?
I guess the project would probably be what we've done for the MTA in New York with the pantographs, because those are probably the first ones that we've been told those are the first ones that are being installed in North America. And so the pantograph is the buses are parked four wide, and there's a rack system that's above the buses. The buses don't move. The pantograph is what moves and charges one, and then it lifts and it moves over and it charges the other one. And this is without anyone touching anything. It's all done electronically. And
really,
4 buses are charged, they move out, 4 more buses come in.
Wow.
I think that type of a system we'll start to see 5-10 years from now in a lot of fleet applications, and that's one that we're very proud of. It's behind the fence, so it's not like it can be seen, but it's a public project, so I can speak to it. Whereas, just like you said, we're under an NDA with all of our clients, and a lot of the projects that we do are proprietary and ones that we can't share. So that's one that we're very proud of. As far as the 3 biggest challenges, it's definitely looking at the current infrastructure when we go out there, and then convincing the site host that we got to take this holistic approach to this, because we don't want to be coming back here 2 years from now and looking at the infrastructure again. We got to make sure that we have the vision, whether that's, an auto dealership that has the projections carried out on what the mix will be for the next 5 to 10 years, or that's a fleet location that knows that they're converting X number of their trucks, vans, whatever it is, from combustion engine to electric, whether that's plug-in electric or fully electric. What is that projection, so that we then can look at what's the downtime and we start to back in and do the equation. Then some tough decisions need to be made. I've worked with facilities that run one shift, and we looked at it and said, we need 4,000 chargers if we run one shift, but if we run 3 shifts, we can get this down to 400 chargers. And so it's really doing more staffing, more security, all sorts of more supervision, more overhead. There's a whole cost benefit analysis that has to be done. It isn't as simple as, hey, we got putting some chargers out here and let's make sure that we've got the right number of chargers. So it's future proofing and knowing what the projections look like, and then ensuring that everything is process driven, so that we're not making short-term decisions that are the most cost-effective solutions. These may not be the most cost-effective solutions because we're building a fueling island. And just like you see a fueling island at a gas station now. So you're building an EV charging station fueling island. But the process is the vehicle moves up, charges, and moves forward, just like you'd see at a gas station. And so it's getting people to embrace that change, because in a lot of instances, we're given plan sets or renderings where the chargers are put up against the wall or on pedestals or bollard-mounted chargers that are right up against the building. There's no process flow to that.
It's so funny because, when you think about, we're in the electrification industry, so we think about this all day. So when we go talk to somebody about what their plan should be, feedback I've always gotten is like the whole thing's intimidating. It's, if you buy chargers before you buy your cars, if your chargers don't match the voltage that the vehicles need, they might not charge at the same speed, or vice versa. Whether an AC inverter is needed and what that AC inverter can take versus, if you're just charging in DC. And you've always done such a good job focusing on the infrastructure for customers. I've always noticed that when I've been in conversations with you, make people feel really confident in what you're doing. And then I think where I've always picked it up is on the utility business side, and making sure that once that right infrastructure decision was made, that as a customer's paying for their circumstance and literally on their electric bill, that, they're not paying an arm and a leg more because, as we both know, sometimes the utility will put you on a rate that's really difficult. And so, the answer is it's business focused with the utilities, it's infrastructure focused, but it's a lot. And I can see how, it can be intimidating. And it's kind of funny because I think gas cars it's so simple, it's just like, go fill up your car and everybody knows how to do it. But in the electric world, it can be more convenient. It can cost you a lot less money, or it can be a lot more inconvenient and cost you a lot more money, and it's these little nuanced things that make such a big difference. And I think that's what you guys do such a good job of, is helping customers navigate that water.
It's definitely a challenge. It's definitely a challenge.
And it's a moving target.
It absolutely is.
So this is my next question for you. You worked with every charging solution under the sun. So this question isn't about the charging solution, but it's really about like the factors of the charging solutions that you appreciate the most and think are some of the best solutions. Like what are charging solution components out there, such as, I'll just give you an example, like modularity. What are some of the things that you deem most important in picking the right solution for a customer?
Well, it starts with going back to finding out exactly what the vehicle acceptance rate is for AC and DC charging for those vehicles that this particular client is going to be processing through there. So it doesn't make any sense, to put in 180 kW chargers if the vehicle acceptance rate for that fleet vehicle is a year from now is going to be 350 kW. Making sure that there are chargers out there that have the infrastructure where you can add power modules to them and build up. So if today it's 180 kW, but in 2 years you're going to be at 350 kW, you can grow as the vehicle grows, right? And so you don't need to invest all of that money now, but you make sure that all of the future proofing is done. The conduit is properly sized, the wire is properly sized, and everything is set so that when the vehicles are ready to accept a faster rate of speed, we've got the infrastructure there, and it's nothing more than installing power modules. So I think that it really comes down to, you've got to do a deep dive with the client to make sure that they know and share with you exactly what the future is going to look like from the need standpoint. And then we can build and engineer a solution that carries them to cover that.
Yeah, totally. And, you have an electric car, right? You have a Model Y, I believe.
Yes, my wife has an S. Yes.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about, and this is more of a personal question than, from a business perspective, but we both enjoy driving our Teslas. We love the technology inside them. What are the things that you're looking for in electric cars, that you see features that are coming out in any electric cars with anyone that you're working with, where you say, hi, I find that really interesting and unique?
Definitely solid state battery technology. I think that's going to be a game changer. It'll extend the range of the vehicles. It'll extend the life of the batteries. It'll make the whole driver experience that much better. Because in a lot of instances, it'll eliminate the range anxiety. As much as I love my vehicle, I love it that much more if I could get 500 miles, or if I could get 600 miles between charging, right? And so, there's a lot of factors that play into that when I go on a road trip. And so I think that hands down, the driving experience is what I'm looking for in the future, and that driving experience will be enhanced with solid state batteries, extending the range of the drive, the ride itself.
What I'm really curious to see is if solid state batteries does anything to the resale value of the cars we have right now. I've thought about selling my cars just to make sure.
Very fair point.
Yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
No, it was a great chat, and the best part of this is you scheduled this for a Friday afternoon. So as the recently departed Jimmy Buffett would say, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. So
that's correct. That's why we do it at this time, so that we can either have a beer right here off the screen or right afterwards. Thanks for the time. I appreciate it, and we'll connect soon.
Okay. Thanks again, Chris.